The Swedes, Quist from Rinkeby parish, Nysted from Syringa parish, and Thomason from Uppmana parish, watched as the enemy drew ever closer. Ahead of them, cannons thundered, rifles cracked, and they saw their own men, slowly but surely, being forced back. But for these Swedes, the enemy was not one of Sweden's old historical foes, not red-coated Danes or green-clad Russians. No, those approaching them were dressed in gray, and among the cannon blasts, the rifle fire, and the cheers, there also rang out the rebel yell. Quist, Nysted, and Thomason had left Sweden behind. Now, on July 2, 1863, they stood just south of the town of Gettysburg at Cemetery Ridge. The men advancing toward them belonged to the rebel army, and the American Civil War was reaching its bloody crescendo around this town. This was the second day of the battle, and the Confederates' successful commander, Robert E. Lee, had sent forward his First Corps, led by General Longstreet, to seize Cemetery Ridge. The high ground dominated the entire area. The rebels came closer and closer. A misplaced corps under Sickles, left without support because of its commander's carelessness and incompetence, had been shattered and was now running back. Once they had passed, only the 1st Minnesota Infantry Regiment remained. Behind them, the Union Army was in disorder, even though frantic efforts were underway to secure the lines. At that moment, a rider came galloping through the powder smoke. He pulled in his horse and stopped by the regiment. Then he cried out the words no soldier in the line wants to hear. "My God, are these all the men we have here?" It was Hancock, the corps commander of the corps to which they belonged. He understood what was at stake. If the rebels reached the position first, the battle itself might be lost. He continued, "What regiment is this?" "The 1st Minnesota," came the answer from the regimental commander. Hancock pointed toward the rebel lines and said, "Attack those lines! Attack, Colonel, and take those colors!" Soon, 262 blue-clad men began to march forward. They were the price that had to be paid. A drop of blue advanced toward a sea of gray, a blood sacrifice to buy time and save the positions of the Army of the Potomac. Interestingly, the survivors described the attack almost like a Swedish Carolean assault. The regiment advanced in silence and at a rapid pace, then broke into a full run with bayonets lowered and cold steel forward. The enemy's first line wavered before the charging men and began to fold back into the second line. The two lines collided and slowed the advance. Then, at close range, the 1st Minnesota opened fire. But the odds were overwhelming. Thousands of rebels faced one thin blue line, and soon the Minnesotans were surrounded on 3 sides. As they fought, men were often struck from several directions at once and fell, wounded, dying, or dead. The number still able to fight fell rapidly. But then, just as resistance seemed about to collapse, the crackle of musket volleys was heard behind the men of Minnesota. Had the enemy now surrounded them completely? But it was not they who were struck by these volleys. It was the rebels who fell. Hancock's reinforcements, sent forward in haste, had now reached the ridge and began a furious fire to support the 1st Minnesota. Fate had accepted the terrible blood sacrifice. Of the 262 men who had begun the attack to buy time for the Union Army, only 47 were still standing when the rebels began to withdraw. Longstreet's offensive here had failed. Of the 7 Swedes in the regiment, 6 had been wounded. Quist had been hit in the hand and in the left leg. He would not be able to return to the regiment for half a year. Thomason had been hit in the left arm, which was amputated. He died in August from complications. Nysted was struck in the left hand and the right thigh. The 1st Minnesota would fight again on the 3rd day during Pickett's charge, the rebels' great but failed attack to drive the Union Army from the field. There, they would suffer another 17 casualties. But for the Swedes of the 1st Minnesota, the great and bloody day was July 2, 1863. On that day, 7 Swedes, together with 255 other men, through their heroic attack against at least 1,500 rebels during a critical phase of the battle, bought time with their blood for the rest of the Union Army to secure its lines.